There's a silence that only lives in nursing homes. It doesn't scream, it doesn't echo, it just sits there. In the chair by the window, waiting for footsteps that never come. This story is for those who waited for a call, a visit, a voice that once called them mom or dad, but now forgets their name. Welcome to life after 50, a place where we don't chase trends, we chase meaning. We share stories that linger long after the screen goes dark. If you've ever felt left behind, if you've ever questioned your worth after giving everything, then subscribe to this space. Not just to follow, but to belong, because here, every wrinkle is a chapter, and every tear has a reason. And if this story touches you, share it with someone who's forgotten, with someone who's trying to forgive, or someone who still believes that love might come back. Now, let me take you to a quiet hallway. In a nursing home off the edge of town. Where one father sat by the window, watching the driveway, long after the goodbye kiss, long after the engine faded, long after he realized they weren't coming back. They told me they'd be back by Sunday. That was 3 months ago. The last thing I saw was the red minivan. It turned out of the parking lot, didn't slow, didn't hesitate. And from the second row window, my granddaughter waved. She was only 6. She didn't know, but my son, my daughter-in-law, they did. The worst kind of abandonment doesn't leave bruises. It leaves empty chairs and unanswered phone calls. The day they dropped me off, they said it was just for the weekend. They said, "Dad, you'll like it here." They have chess clubs, bingo, even a little garden. I laughed because I hated bingo, and my knees hadn't let me kneel in a garden since Carol passed, but I smiled anyway, because that's what parents do. Even when they see the lie in their children's eyes. My room was small, a twin bed, a chair by the window, a dresser with drawers that stuck. The nurse, Miriam, her name was, asked me what I'd like to unpack first. I said nothing, because when you're told you're just visiting, you don't unpack, you wait. I waited that Friday. Didn't sleep, kept checking my watch like I had somewhere to be, like they hadn't already taken my car keys 6 months ago for my safety. I waited Saturday. Still no call. The front desk told me, "Maybe your son got held up. Want us to call him?" I said no. Because dignity doesn't scream. It just folds quietly, like a note left in a coat pocket you don't wear anymore. You don't realize how much noise love makes until it's gone. By Sunday, I stopped asking. By Wednesday, I stopped looking. By the next week, I started unpacking, folded my socks into the drawer, hung up the 3 shirts they left me, placed Carol's photo on the windowsill. She was smiling in it. She always was. I didn't cry, not yet. Men my age don't cry when we're abandoned. We tighten our jaw, we nod politely. We say things like, "They must be busy," and kids these days have so much on their plate. But deep down, we feel the silence like a wound, and mine was bleeding quietly into every corner of that room. There was one thing they left in my bag that didn't belong, a receipt from a moving truck company, signed with my son's name. The date was last Thursday. I hadn't seen it at first. It was crumpled in the side pocket beneath my old slippers. I smoothed it out with shaking hands. Read it twice. He hadn't just dropped me off here. He had moved everything out of my house the day before. Sometimes you're not left behind by accident, you're left behind by design. The truth hit me in the chest like a cold wind. I wasn't visiting, I was being stored. I sat down in the stiff armchair, stared out the window. The sun was going down over the hedges. The parking lot was empty, except for one pigeon, pecking at a gum wrapper near the curb. That's when the tears came, not loud, not shaking, just warm and steady, rolling down cheeks. That hadn't felt anything in weeks. I whispered to the glass. "You said you'd come back," but glass doesn't answer. It just reflects what's already broken. Every morning, I sat by the window, not because the view was beautiful, it wasn't. Just a patch of dying grass, a crooked hedge, and the backside of the staff parking lot, but I watched it anyway, because when you've been left behind, you start looking for things that move as proof that you're still here. That Tuesday, I saw something new, a boy. Couldn't have been more than 8. He was sitting alone on the curb near the service road, legs crossed, scribbling in a notebook, no parents, no backpack, just a juice box and a pencil that looked too short to still work. Sometimes the smallest thing outside a window can crack open something inside you. I watched him for an hour. He didn't move much, just scratched at the page, sipped his drink. Scratched again, then he looked up, right at me, not past me, not through me, but at me, and he smiled, It was the first time anyone had looked at me like that in weeks, not with pity, not with obligation, just curiosity, like I mattered, The next day, he came again, Same spot, same notebook, This time, he brought a sandwich. Tuna, I think. He waved at me, I hesitated, then waved back. Sometimes the universe doesn't give you what you lost. It gives you someone who notices you're missing. On Thursday, I waited earlier than usual, I skipped breakfast. Got to the chair by 6:45. The boy didn't show, not at 7, not at 8, my chest felt tight, the kind that isn't quite a heart attack, but just old disappointment learning new tricks. Then, just as I was about to give up, there he was, running this time. He sat, pulled out his notebook, and held it up to the sky like he wanted me to see. ISQUINTED. From my angle, all I could make out was a big red heart drawn in marker next to it. A stick figure of a man sitting in a window. Me. I laughed. Out loud. Startled the nurse walking past with meds. She said, "Everything all right, Mr. Ellison?" I nodded. Everything wasn't all right, but in that moment, it was something better than all right. It was alive. The boy came almost every day after that. He never came close, never tried to enter the building, never knocked. He just existed out there for me to notice. And for him to remind me that I was still someone worth noticing. One morning, he brought chalk, started drawing on the pavement by the curb, shapes, swirls, a sun with big sunglasses, and one word in messy block letters. "Hello?" I pressed my palm to the glass. The boy copied me, pressed his palm into the chalk dust. 2 people, 2 different worlds, 1 pane of glass, and something like understanding between them. Even in places where hope dies, a child's smile can plant something stubborn and wild. That weekend it rained hard. No boy. I stared out for hours, watching the chalk wash away in pink and blue rivers. My fingers itched. I hadn't written anything since my kids dropped me off, but I asked the nurse for a notepad. She raised an eyebrow, but brought me one. And for the first time in weeks, I picked up a pen. I didn't write poetry, or a journal, or a letter. I just drew a heart, like his and underneath it I wrote, "I see you too." I taped it to the window, didn't know if he'd come back. Didn't know if he could even read it from that far, but I needed him to know that someone was still here, still watching, still remembering what it felt like to be seen. He returned 3 days later, pointed to the window, gave a thumbs up, then sat down and started drawing again. This time a tree, with 2 stick figures underneath it, holding hands. And in my chest, something thawed, just a little. They say you stop making friends after a certain age, that by the time your hair is gray, your circle is set. Your trust is brittle, your heart close for renovations, but they never tell you what happens when you're placed in a building with dozens of other people who've also been left behind. His name was Harold, room 217, across the hallway, 2 doors down from mine. I only knew his name because every time a nurse came near his door, She whispered it like a prayer no one wanted to. Answer, Mr. Harold's not eating again. Harold's off his meds. Harold said he saw something in the mirror last night. I had never spoken to him, never even really seen him, until one night. I couldn't sleep. I went to the hallway, just pacing. That's when his door creaked open, and from inside the dark, a voice came. They think we're broken, you and I stopped cold. The hallway smelled like bleach and sadness. The nurse's station was empty. Excuse me? I said. Harold stepped out. He was thin, bent slightly to the right, wearing an old navy sweatshirt that had seen better decades. He looked at me the way the boy looked at me through the window, not with pity, but with memory. When the world throws you away, only the discarded know how to see each other. We didn't talk long that first night. Just nodded. He asked my name. I asked his, then he said something I wouldn't forget. They didn't drop you off for a visit, did they? I shook my head. He nodded slowly. Me neither. 20 months now, no calls. We started talking more after that. In the hallway, in the garden, sometimes just sitting near each other during bingo, pretending to care about letters we couldn't hear anymore. Harold was once a jazz pianist, played in smoky lounges from Chicago to New Orleans. Real music, he said, before auto-tune turned hearts into robots. He had a daughter too. Her name was Candace. She used to braid his hair when he still had some. Used to sing along to his piano, feet dangling off the bench. She visits? I asked. He looked out. The window. Then whispered, only in dreams. Harold was the first person who asked me what my wife's name was. Not, was she nice? Not, how long were you married? Just her name, Carol, I said. He smiled. Pretty name. Bet she made strong coffee. She did, I laughed. She warmed the mugs first too. Damn, he said, she loved you proper. Grief is the proof that you loved real. Silence is the echo it leaves behind. One day, Harold didn't come out of his room. The staff said he was just tired, but I'd heard those words before. Used them when my wife got sick. Used them before I admitted what was really wrong on day 4. I knocked on his door. Nothing. I cracked it open. He was sitting in bed, staring at his hands like they weren't his anymore. I used to play Miles Davis, he said. I nodded. No, I can't remember the notes. I sat beside him. You don't need the notes, I said. Just the feeling. He looked at me like I'd handed him the key, and for the first time since I got here, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a man sitting beside another man, trying to hold on to something the world kept trying to take. That night, I dreamed of Carol. She was playing the piano, and behind her, Harold was humming, and somewhere beyond them both, the boy outside the window was drawing something in the sky. Sometimes what saves us isn't love returning, but pain being understood. It was a Thursday, the kind of day where nothing happens because nothing ever happens here. The soup was lukewarm. Harold was sleeping, and the boy outside hadn't shown up in 3 days. I was dozing off in my chair when I heard it. 3 slow. Knocks on my door. Not the nurse. They always call your name first. Not the cleaning lady. She sings off key before entering. No. This knock was soft, unsure, almost ashamed. I opened the door. And there she was. Emma, my youngest daughter. I hadn't seen her in 9 years. Her hair was shorter now, shoulders a little hunched. But her eyes, they were still that same stormy gray I used to watch turn glassy. Whenever she cried over scraped knees or her brother's cruel words, I didn't say anything, not right away. I just looked at her like I was staring at a photograph I never thought I'd find again. Sometimes time doesn't heal. It just hides the wound until someone reopens it. Hi, Dad, she said. I blinked, not because of age, but because of disbelief. Emma? She nodded. I almost whispered, what are you doing here? But instead I said, how did you find me? She looked down. I saw the picture online, she said. They sold the house. It was listed publicly, but the boxes in the garage, one had your name on it. My name on a box. Like a donation label. She continued. I called Daniel. He didn't say much, just said you were here now, that it was best. I felt my hands tighten around the doorframe. Best for who? I asked her. She didn't answer, just stepped inside. Took in the room the photo of Carol, the empty teacup on the sill. I didn't know, she said. I swear, Dad, I didn't know. And in that moment, I believed her, because guilt lives in the eyes. And hers were full of it. We sat for a long while, didn't say much until she finally asked, why didn't you call me? I smiled painfully, because I thought you chose silence. She shook her head. I was angry. At Daniel, at how Mom's was handled, but I never stopped thinking about you. We often assume we were forgotten, when in truth they were just afraid to come back. She reached into her bag, pulled out a photograph. Old, worn, corners curled like autumn leaves. It was of me holding her when she was 4, covered in finger paint. Laughing so hard I nearly dropped her. You used to hum Edelweiss to me when I was sick, she whispered. I nodded. You remember that? Of course, she said. You were the one person who never made me feel like a burden. And that's when I felt it, the crack, the dam inside me, that had been holding back years of hurt, finally split. Tears came, not hot and bitter, but soft like spring rain on dry soil. I missed you, Emma, I said. I missed us, Dad. She reached out, held my hand. It was smaller now. Not the same one that held a teddy bear and tugged at my coat, but it was hers and it was warm. Sometimes the heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. We talked for hours, about Mom, about Daniel, about where things went wrong. She told me she had a daughter of her own now, named her Carolyn, after my wife, and that she'd like me to meet. Her a chance. A thread. A door creaking open after a long winter. Before she left, she stood at the window. Noticed the drawing from the boy. He made that? She asked. I nodded. He's been sitting outside almost every day. Never talks, just draws. Emma smiled. He reminds me of me. As she walked out, she turned and said, You're not alone, Dad. Not anymore. There are moments when your heart tells you something your mind doesn't want to hear. This chapter might be your last. After Emma left, the silence in my room felt different. Not like the lonely kind, but the kind that follows truth. The stillness after a confession. The quiet before healing begins. For days I kept thinking about what she said. About Carolyn, the granddaughter I'd never met. About Daniel and the way he looked at me the day they dropped me off, as if I was already gone, and I realized something they needed to hear from me. Not the version in their heads, not the angry man they imagined, but me while I still had my voice. While I still had a little strength in these tired hands. So I asked Miriam for some stationery, the kind with real paper, the kind you fold, not email, and I wrote, Dear Daniel. I began with the one who hurt me most. I don't know if this will reach you, or if you'll care enough to read it, but I need you to know I'm not angry anymore. I was for a long time. Angry that you made choices I didn't understand, that you didn't see me as a father, but as a burden. But anger is a strange thing. It burns hot, then cold. And in the end, it just burns you. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about choosing not to pass it on. I raised you as best I could. I wasn't perfect. Lord knows I made mistakes. But I never stopped loving you, even when you left me here. Even when you didn't call. You are still my son, but you need to understand this love given out of fear. is not love. And love that disappears when it's inconvenient was never love to begin with. I want you to look at your own children someday and ask yourself, if they did this to you, what would it mean? What would it say? I'm not writing this to punish you. I'm writing it so you don't wake up at 70 and wonder why your son won't return your calls. To Emma. I wrote, you saved me. Not with grand gestures. Not with apologies, but with presence. You showed up. And that matters more than you'll ever know. I'm proud of the woman you've become. And if I have any say in the matter, Carolyn deserves to know that her grandfather is still here. Still watching. Still trying. And finally, I wrote a note to Carolyn herself, even if she couldn't read it yet. To my little sunshine I haven't met yet, you don't know me. But I've loved you since before you were born. Because loving someone doesn't require time, just hope. Legacy is not in what you leave in your will, it's in what you leave in their hearts. I folded the pages. Placed them in an envelope, didn't label it last will, didn't use legal terms, just wrote one word across the front, truth. I left it on the windowsill, next to Carol's picture, because if anyone understood truth, it was her. That night, the boy outside returned, first time in days. He held up his notebook again. This time, he had drawn a sun. Big, bright, with a smaller figure holding hands with a larger one. Below it in bold block letters, see you tomorrow. And just like that, I cried again, but this time not because I was broken, because I was being pieced back together by unexpected hands. If you're still here, thank you for staying, for listening, for sitting with this story even when it hurt. Because if it hurt, that means it touched something real. And that's what stories are meant to do. Some of us were told we're too old to matter, that after 50, we're just background noise to a louder world. But I want you to know this, you are not background. You are the whole page. You are a lifetime of lessons, laughter, heartache, and moments that only you can tell. The world may forget your name, but it cannot erase your impact. Maybe you've been left behind. Maybe your phone doesn't ring as often. Maybe the room you sit in feels too quiet, too long, but you are still here. Still breathing, still capable of healing, and of being seen. At Life After 50, we tell stories like this because silence is loud and loneliness is real, but connection, even through a screen, can still reach places where even family hasn't looked. So if this story spoke to you, please subscribe to this channel. Not just to follow, but to stay connected. And if someone came to mind while listening, someone who's hurting, someone who feels forgotten, share this video with them. You never know. Your small act of kindness might be the very thing that saves someone's day, or even their life, because here in this quiet little corner of the internet, we believe something simple but powerful. It's never too late to be remembered. This was Life After 50. Thank you for watching. And until next time, take care of your heart. It's carried you this far, and it still has more to give.